Her kids always slept in our bed. When I finally asked for boundaries, everything exploded. When I first started dating my girlfriend, everything felt like it had fallen into place. I'm in my late 20s, she's a couple of years younger than me, and honestly, I thought I had finally found someone who understood me. She was warm, caring, and fun to be around. But unlike me, she already had 2 kids, 2 little boys, ages 6 and 8. From the beginning, I told myself I was ready for this. I wasn't naive. Dating someone with children isn't like dating someone single and unattached. It comes with baggage, responsibility, and a different kind of commitment. Still, I wanted to give it a chance because I truly liked her. The first few weeks of our relationship were filled with those exciting moments everyone looks forward to: late-night texts, inside jokes, and that honeymoon phase where every little thing feels magical. I would stay over at her place a couple of nights each week, and at first, I thought everything was going well. Her kids seemed to like me enough, even though they were a bit shy at first. I wasn't trying to rush into being some sort of father figure. I just wanted them to feel comfortable having me around. But then I noticed something that caught me completely off guard. Every single time I stayed over, without fail, the kids would end up in her bed. Not just for a few minutes because they had a nightmare, not because they were sick or scared of the dark. No, this was every night. It wasn't even treated like something unusual. They would brush their teeth, put on pajamas, and instead of going to their own bedrooms, where they both had perfectly good beds, they would crawl right into hers. And she didn't bat an eye. She'd just smile at me, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. The first time it happened, I tried not to react. I didn't want to seem harsh or judgmental. I figured maybe it was a one-off situation. Maybe they were going through a tough time or feeling insecure about me being there. But by the second and third time, it became clear this was routine. Her bed wasn't just her bed, it was their bed too. And there I was, lying in a queen-sized mattress with 2 kids sprawled across half of it, leaving me clinging to the edge of the bed like some kind of intruder in their family life. The tea first, I told myself to be patient. They're just kids, I thought. Maybe this is a phase. But deep down, a voice inside me whispered, this doesn't feel right. This isn't normal for their ages. I grew up in a household with boundaries. My parents loved me, but they also made it clear that kids had their space and adults had theirs. Seeing an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old crawl into their mom's bed every single night set off alarms in my head. And honestly, I started to feel uncomfortable in ways I hadn't expected as the weeks went on. I started noticing just how much this sleeping arrangement was affecting me. At first, I thought I could brush it off. After all, it wasn't my place to dictate how she chose to raise her kids. But the more nights I spent there, the more obvious it became. There was no space for me. Not just physically in the bed, but emotionally, too. Imagine lying down at the end of a long day, hoping for a bit of intimacy or even just quiet time with the person you care about, only to have 2 kids wedge themselves between you. That's exactly what happened. I'd be on one side, she'd be in the middle, and the boys would cling to her like their lives depended on it. Any chance of a normal couple's night, whether it was cuddling, talking, or just holding hands before falling asleep, was gone. I was pushed to the sidelines, a guest in her world that I tried to be understanding. I told myself, these kids are still adjusting to their mom dating someone new. Maybe this is their way of feeling secure. But when I thought about it logically, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. These weren't toddlers who still needed comfort at night. They were school-aged boys who had their own bedrooms and beds just a few steps away. Why weren't they using them? The turning point came one night when I casually asked her, "Hey, do the kids ever sleep in their own rooms?" She just shrugged, as if the thought had never even crossed her mind. "They like being with me," she said. "It makes them feel safe." I didn't argue in that moment, but my mind was screaming. Safe from what? It wasn't about safety, it was about boundaries. And boundaries were clearly missing. Lying there night after night, cramped between restless kids and a woman I was supposed to be building a relationship with, I started to feel resentful. Not toward the boys, they were just doing what they were used to, but toward her. Why wasn't she encouraging them to be independent? Why was she letting them invade a space that should belong to her and her partner? The truth was, I didn't feel like her partner at all. I felt like an outsider, like I had accidentally signed up to be a third wheel in her relationship with her kids. And as much as I tried to suppress those feelings, they gnawed at me constantly, making it impossible to relax or enjoy the time I spent with her. That's when I realized this wasn't just a minor annoyance. This was something that could make or break the relationship if it didn't change. Point one night, after tossing and turning for hours, I finally admitted to myself just how much it was eating away at me. I couldn't sleep, not because of the noise or the movement of the kids, but because of what it represented. Every time I rolled over and felt a tiny elbow jab me in the ribs, it was like a reminder. You don't belong here. I started paying closer attention to the whole routine. Bedtime in that house wasn't just chaotic, it was ritualized. She would let the boys brush their teeth, put on pajamas, and then instead of sending them off to their rooms, she'd usher them straight into her bed. They'd jump under the covers, get cozy, and she'd settle in the middle like it was the most normal thing in the world. I'd sit there, awkwardly perched on the edge of the mattress, waiting for some kind of acknowledgement that this arrangement wasn't right. But it never came. She didn't even seem to notice that I was uncomfortable. The worst part? When I stayed over, I was expected to just fit in. If I so much as shifted or tried to stretch out, one of the boys would groan or complain that I was taking up too much space. A couple of times, the younger one even shoved me with his little feet as if to reclaim his territory. And she would just laugh, like it was cute. It wasn't cute to me. It was humiliating. I wasn't competing with some ex or a rival for her affection. I was competing with her own children for a spot in her bed. I tried rationalizing it again. Maybe she felt guilty about raising them without their father. Maybe she overcompensated by giving them this constant closeness at night. But then another thought crept in. If she doesn't know how to set boundaries with her own kids, what does that say about the future of our relationship? The thought terrified me. Because if this was how things were now, when we weren't even living together yet, what would it look like if we did move in? Would I ever get a space that was truly mine, or would I always be shoved aside, a guest in her life, while she kept prioritizing the kids in every possible way? I wanted to talk to her about it, but I knew the conversation wasn't going to be easy. How do you tell a mother that her kids don't belong in her bed without sounding heartless? How do you explain that what looks innocent to her feels suffocating to you? So instead of confronting her directly, I bottled it up. And like all bottled up feelings, it started to leak out in other ways. I'd get irritated over little things. When she spent too long scrolling her phone, when dinner ran late, when she forgot to reply to a text. It wasn't really about those things. It was about me lying awake night after night, feeling like a stranger in my own relationship. That's when I knew the issue wasn't going to disappear. It was building into something bigger, and unless I addressed it, it was going to blow up in my face sooner or later. The breaking point came one Saturday morning. I had stayed over the night before, and as usual, the boys had crawled into bed and claimed their spots. I hardly slept. By sunrise, my back ached, my eyes were heavy, and my patience was paper thin. When I opened my eyes, the older boy was lying sideways, his feet pressed right into my chest. The younger one had wrapped himself around their mom like a koala, while I was clinging to the edge of the mattress, one wrong move away from falling onto the floor. I sat up and just stared at the scene. She looked peaceful, like this was the most natural, comforting thing in the world. And maybe for her it was. But for me, it was suffocating. That morning, as soon as the kids ran off to watch cartoons, I finally said something. My voice was calm, but inside, I was shaking. Listen, I began. We need to talk about this whole sleeping arrangement. I care about you and I care about your boys, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep coming over and feeling like I don't belong in my own spot in your life. She blinked at me, caught off guard. What do you mean? She asked. I explained everything. How I felt pushed aside, how uncomfortable it was, how it wasn't about me disliking the kids, but about needing boundaries. I told her that I wanted to feel like her partner, not just another guest squeezed into her life whenever convenient. Her expression hardened. She crossed her arms and said, "They're just kids. They need comfort. They've been through a lot." "I understand that," I replied, trying to stay composed. "But they also have their own rooms, their own beds. This isn't about denying them love. It's about teaching them independence. And it's about us, too. If we're serious about building a future together, we need space that belongs to us as a couple." For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy and tense. Then she sighed and said, "You're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. It's not like they'll be sleeping in my bed when they're teenagers. This is temporary. But that was the problem. Temporary had already lasted years. And if she didn't see it as an issue now, what would stop it from dragging on indefinitely? I walked away from that conversation feeling unheard, dismissed, and more isolated than before. She didn't yell. She didn't get defensive. She just brushed me off, like my feelings weren't important enough to matter. And that, in many ways, hurt more than if she had screamed at me. Because it showed me that in her eyes, my discomfort was a minor inconvenience compared to her routine with her kids. That's when something shifted inside me. For the first time, I began to wonder if this relationship had a future at all. After that conversation, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. It lingered all day, like a shadow that followed me even when I tried to distract myself. When I got home that night, I dropped onto my couch and stared at the ceiling. I replayed every detail of the morning, her words, her tone, the way she dismissed my concerns as if they were nothing more than a passing complaint. It wasn't the first time I had felt brushed aside in this relationship. There had been smaller moments before, times when I brought up boundaries, structure, or even just the need for a proper date night. And she would wave it off with, "That's just how things are with kids." And maybe she was right. Maybe this was just the reality of dating someone who had children. But still, I couldn't shake the ache of feeling like an outsider in her world that I pictured the future. What would it look like if this didn't change? Would I always be the guy clinging to the side of the bed while her boys sprawled out between us? Would I ever get to feel like a partner, or was I destined to be a permanent afterthought? The questions ate at me. The idea of building a life together excited me. She was an amazing woman in so many ways, but the thought of being in this same position year after year drained that excitement away. The next time I went over, I tried again. I told myself I'd be calmer, clearer, less emotional. We sat at her kitchen table while the boys played in the living room. I leaned forward and said, "I don't want to fight about this. I just need you to understand that this is more than me being uncomfortable. It's about respect. Respect for me, for our relationship, and for the boundaries kids also need." She sighed, rubbed her temples, and muttered, "You're acting like I'm doing something wrong as a mother. Do you realize how judgmental that sounds?" That hit me hard. I hadn't meant it like that. I wasn't attacking her parenting. I was trying to explain how this was impacting us. But once she framed it that way, the conversation turned sour. Suddenly, I was the bad guy, the one who didn't understand kids, the one who was putting myself before her children. I left that night feeling more defeated than ever. It was like there was an invisible wall between us, and no matter how I tried to climb it, I slid right back down, lying in my own bed later, stretched out in the silence of my empty apartment. I realized something unsettling. I felt more at peace alone than I did crammed into her world where there was no room for me. And that realization scared me. Because once you start feeling safer outside of a relationship than within it, the clock starts ticking. The following week felt like a blur. Work kept me busy, but in the quiet moments, during my commute, over coffee breaks, or while lying awake at night, the same thoughts circled endlessly. Was I being unreasonable? Was I expecting too much from her? Or was I just ignoring the obvious signs that this wasn't going to work out long term? The questions were relentless. And the more I replayed everything in my head, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't just about kids sharing a bed with their mom. It was about me feeling invisible in my own relationship. On Friday night, she invited me over for dinner. I walked into the apartment, and as usual, the boys were already bouncing around. She smiled, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, then immediately turned her attention back to them. Dinner itself was fine. She cooked. We all sat around the table, and for a moment, it almost felt like the kind of family setting I thought I wanted. But as soon as the plates were cleared, the boys started pulling at her, begging to watch a movie in her bed. She hesitated for about half a second before caving. "All right, but only one movie," she said with a laugh. And just like that, the night I had hoped might finally give us some time together turned into yet another rerun of the same script. The boys piled into her bed, she followed them, and I was left standing in the hallway, wondering where exactly I fit into this picture. I lingered for a while, then eventually excused myself, saying I had an early morning. She kissed me goodnight absent-mindedly, already focused on helping the boys pick a movie. Driving home, I felt something in me shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even disappointment anymore. It was clarity. For months, I had been trying to convince myself that this was temporary, that as the kids got older, boundaries would naturally form and things would change. But deep down, I realized I'd been lying to myself. This wasn't about age or growing pains. This was about her choices. She didn't see the issue because, to her, there wasn't one. And if she couldn't acknowledge how much it was hurting me now, why would she ever? By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. A decision was forming in my mind, one I had resisted for weeks, even months, that I had to either accept this reality completely or I had to walk away. And for the first time, walking away didn't feel impossible. It felt like freedom. The weekend stretched ahead of me like an endless test of patience. I woke up Saturday morning with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that comes when you know a difficult decision is waiting, but you keep pushing it off for weeks. I had been living in limbo, half in this relationship, half out of it. My heart wanted closeness, intimacy, partnership. But the reality was stark. I was just a guest in her world, squeezed into the margins of her life that I spent the morning pacing my apartment, making coffee I barely drank, scrolling on my phone without really seeing anything. My mind kept returning to the same thought. How do I even bring this up? Breaking up with someone isn't just about the words, it's about the weight behind them. I didn't want to come off as cruel. I didn't want to paint her as a bad mother. Because she wasn't. She adored her kids. She gave them love and safety, and I respected that deeply. But in giving them everything, she left no space for me to by the afternoon. I grabbed my jacket and went for a long walk. The air was cold, biting, and it matched my mood. Every step felt like me rehearsing the conversation in my head. I care about you, but I can't live like this. I need boundaries to feel respected, and those boundaries don't exist here. It's not fair to me to always come second, or third, or not even be on the list. Each version sounded harsh, but no matter how I rephrased it, the truth was the same. That evening, she texted me, asking if I wanted to come over for dinner again. I stared at the message for a long time. Normally, I would have gone without hesitation, hoping things might magically feel different. But this time, I hesitated. That I typed back, "Not tonight, I think I need some space." Her reply was almost immediate. "Okay, is everything all right?" And there it was, the question I had been waiting for, the opening I needed. I didn't answer right away. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my chest tightening with nerves. I wasn't ready to spill everything over text, but I also couldn't keep pretending. Finally, I wrote, "We should talk soon. In person." I hit send, put my phone face down, and just sat there in the silence of my apartment. The decision wasn't final yet, but it was close. I could feel it pressing against me like a storm rolling in. I knew the next time I saw her, I'd have to face the truth, not just for her, but for myself. And as much as it scared me, a small part of me felt lighter, as though admitting the inevitable had already set me free. Sunday afternoon, I finally decided it was time. I couldn't keep circling around my own doubts anymore. I texted her, "Can we talk tonight?" Her reply came back quickly, "Sure. What's going on?" I didn't answer the question. Instead, I just wrote, "I'll come by around 7. The drive to her place felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, my thoughts bouncing between fear of hurting her and relief at finally speaking the truth. By the time I pulled into her driveway, my stomach was in knots. She greeted me at the door with a smile, wearing a loose sweater and leggings, her hair pulled back. The boys were in the living room, a movie playing loudly on the TV. They looked up and waved. And for a brief second, I felt the tug of guilt. This wasn't just about her, but them too. We settled into the kitchen, the only quiet corner of the house. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes scanning my face. "You look serious," she said softly. That I took a deep breath. "I am." There was a long pause. My words felt heavy in my throat, but I pushed through. "I care about you, and I care about your kids. But I don't feel like I have a place here anymore. I've been trying, I've been patient, but the boundaries just aren't there. I don't feel like your partner. I feel like a guest who's always in the way." Her expression shifted, confusion, then a flicker of hurt. She shook her head slightly. "You know how much I love you. But my kids, they need me. They're my world." "I know," I said, my voice low. "And that's why this is so hard. Because I would never ask you to choose between me and them. But the truth is, there's no room left for me. And I can't keep pretending I'm okay with that." Her eyes glossed over with tears. She tried to smile, but it broke halfway. So what are you saying? That you want to leave? I stared at the floor for a moment, then met her gaze. I think I have to. The words hung between us like a cold wind. The kitchen felt smaller, tighter, suffocating. She wiped her cheek quickly, as though she didn't want me to see. The boys' laughter carried in from the living room, a sharp reminder of what was at stake. She glanced toward them, then back at me. They'll ask where you are, she whispered. They'll notice you're gone. That nearly broke me. My chest ached, my throat tightened. But I forced myself to stand firm. They'll be okay. They have you. And you'll be okay too. But I can't keep giving pieces of myself to a place where I don't belong. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of the movie in the other room. Finally, she nodded, slowly, painfully, like the gesture itself weighed her down. Okay, she said quietly. If that's what you need. And in that moment, I knew the decision was real. Leaving her house that night felt surreal. I walked out the door, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't stop to hug the boys or ruffle their hair. They were still glued to the TV, oblivious to what had just shifted in their world. She didn't follow me to the door. I closed it softly behind me, but the sound still echoed in my chest like a gunshot. The drive home was quiet, almost painfully so. Usually, I'd put on music or a podcast, but tonight, the silence was deafening. My thoughts replayed everything. The look in her eyes, the tremble in her voice. The way she said, they'll notice you're gone. It hit me that, for those boys, I had been part of their routine, their family, maybe even a father figure in small ways. And now, overnight, I was just gone. And I pulled into my apartment's parking lot and just sat in the car. My phone buzzed once. It was her. A single message, good night. No heart emoji. No promises of tomorrow. Just two words that felt like a final door closing. Inside my apartment, everything felt foreign. My couch looked emptier, my kitchen quieter. I hadn't realized how much space she and her kids filled in my life until their absence pressed in like a void. I opened the fridge, stared at leftovers I didn't want, then closed it again. I ended up sitting on the floor of my living room, back against the wall, staring into nothing. The guilt crept in. What if I'd been more patient? What if I'd handled it differently? But then another voice inside me pushed back. You tried. You gave it time. You gave more of yourself than you should have. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. The loneliness was sharp, though. No sound of children running around. No text from her asking if I wanted to come over. Just silence at midnight. I finally dragged myself to bed. I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was awake too, lying in her bed, maybe crying. Wondering if the boys had asked about me and she'd had to brush it off with some quick excuse. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when I said, I think I have to leave. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even surprise. It was resignation, like she knew this day would come, and in a way, maybe I had known it too. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt heavy, like the air itself knew something had changed. My first instinct was to check my phone. No messages. Not from her. Not from anyone. I sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, replaying the last year and a half like a movie on loop. The laughs we shared, the nights spent together, the boys running into the room, yelling my name. It was all still so fresh, yet already slipping away in a memory that a part of me wanted to reach out, to send one last message. Are you okay? Do you miss me too? But I stopped myself. Because deep down, I knew that wasn't the question I should be asking. The real question was, do I miss myself? The version of me that existed before I started giving and giving until nothing was left. I brewed coffee, the same way I always did, but even the taste was dull. It wasn't about the coffee. It was about the emptiness at the table. I'd gotten used to noise, to chaos, to little voices asking if they could have pancakes. Now it was just silence, and yet, as much as it hurt, that silence carried something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom that I realized I no longer had to beg for scraps of attention. No longer had to wonder if today she'd choose me or someone else. I didn't have to keep proving my worth to a person who only valued me when it was convenient. The boys? Yes, leaving them was brutal. They didn't deserve to lose someone who cared. But I wasn't their father, and I couldn't carry the responsibility of being their emotional safety net while being denied even the basic respect of a real partner. Later that day, I went for a long walk. The world felt different, strangely sharper, more alive. I noticed things I hadn't before. The warmth of the sun on my skin, the sound of birds. The simple act of breathing without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on me. That night, I sat down and opened a blank journal. I started writing everything: my regrets, my pain, my anger, and yes, even my gratitude. Because despite everything, she had taught me something important. I deserve more than being an option. I deserve to be with someone who chooses me fully, not halfway that I didn't know what the future held. Maybe it would be months before I felt ready to date again. Maybe it would take years. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I closed the journal and set it aside. I whispered to myself, "You made the right choice." It didn't erase the pain, but it gave it meaning. Sometimes walking away doesn't mean you've failed. Sometimes it means you've finally remembered your own worth. And that night, as I turned off the lights and lay down to sleep, I knew that even though this chapter was over, the next one was waiting for me, and this time, I'd step into it stronger. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.